Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for attending. Don't let Windows 10 kill your mobile apps. My name is Brad Horn, and today we're going to be presenting about the latest developments with Windows 10 and Windows Mobile and the compatibility issues we've seen. But before we get started, I just wanted to go through the agenda. If Joe, you could go to the next slide. So today I'm going to first just go do some house cleaning and go through what's new at PTS and what we're up to over the next year. A little bit of sneak peek of some of our new features and developments with our software. I'm also going to do a high-level overview of the problem that we've seen over the last year presented by the latest versions of Win 10 and its compatibility with Windows Mobile Device Center. Joe's going to get a little more into the weeds with the history of the problem and get the technical overview of what really is going on. Dan Peluso, the CTO at PTS, is then going to go through the end-of-life schedule with Windows Mobile and CE and what all of those dates really mean to you and your Windows Mobile deployments. And finally, we're going to get into the fixes. Joe's going to go through some of the short-term fixes, quick changes you can make to get your syncing working again. And then Kristin is going to take the more sales perspective and talk about really what the long-term solution has to be. And then we're going to talk about how to mitigate your risk. So, Joe, why don't you go to the next slide? So just the house cleaning section here, TracerPlus version 10 is finally ready. It's going to be out July 5th. It is not going to have iStore. The iStore is coming out in the fall. We're just giving ourselves some time to work with Apple and get everything perfect for our channel and our end users. We also have an exciting development. We're going to come out with a subscription version of TracerPlus that's really intended for the BYOD devices or our larger deployments. But we think it's also going to fit well for our resellers and our customers who are maybe trying out new things and don't want to make a big commitment. We're actually taking beta customers this summer. We already have some alpha customers out there using the subscription version of TracerPlus. And there's a lot of exciting stuff built in that version for our resellers that gives them a lot of control of what their users are doing. We have a Clearstream 5.0 release scheduled for later this year, which is going to introduce beacon technology. Again, we have some alpha deployments out there already with beacons, and you can beta it today. So I'll just call up your sales representative or your reseller, and they can get you a beta copy that builds in beacon tracking with Clearstream. We also have another really exciting announcement. TracerPlus is now going to be available on PCs. So you can plug in your wedge scanners, create quick data collection forms for laptops and PCs, and do a lot of neat stuff. Again, streaming that data or syncing that data into your pre-existing databases. And we're going to have a beta available for that this summer, and we should have a final release around Q4. Really what we're focusing on over the next year, and you're going to see a lot of releases around integrations or new technologies integrated into our software. So we're going to have some BLE support out in TracerPlus. We're going to have a lot more with RFID sensor tag integration. So we're streaming multiple types of data into Clearstream and TracerPlus. We're also going to introduce active RFID tracking. And you're going to see a lot of IoT support start coming out within Clearstream. We're also really excited about a lot of our API integration. So we're talking to our resellers and our user community, and we really want you to bring us what you guys need. Whether it's more Salesforce integrations or integrations into Microsoft Dynamics, please tell us where you're looking to have those APIs integrated. We've done a lot of great things on our side to make it easier than ever for us to offer direct API integrations. And at the end of the year, we're going to do some TracerPlus and Clearstream training out here on Long Island in our new facilities, and we're excited to do that. We recently expanded our offices and have some good room here to host a number of people and spend a couple days at our site learning, really how to get into the nuts and bolts of TracerPlus and Clearstream and drive some great solutions for your company or your customers. Anyway, on to the next slide, Joe. So please, when you're listening, if you have any questions or comments, or maybe you know something we don't know, please type it into your panel there within GoToMeeting. And if we can't get to that question within the allotted time for the webinar, we'll make sure we send you an email with the answers. Next slide, Joe. So the problem. On a really high level, and we see this on the development side with our customers. The mobile operating system market is moving at lightning speed. Over the last 18 years, we've seen the operating systems move from Palm to Pocket PC to Windows Mobile and CE, and multiple versions of all, and it's moving really quickly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we have some customers who are really happy with the way things are working, and they have really no need to move on to the next generation of operating systems. And it's becoming even more apparent the speed in which the operating systems are moving with the Google Android operating system and the iOS operating system. These companies are actually pushing out releases at a lightning pace, and they're doing it for the consumer market, which is really, that teen to 25-year age group, and they're driving what the features are built into these operating systems. So these businesses are using older, really antiquated operating systems, and the manufacturers now are being forced to support the newer operating systems. So with that being said, last year around 80% of our customer base was still on Windows Mobile and CE, and pretty happy about it. Things were stable, no real problems. But we all knew, and we heard it from our manufacturers, that the end of Windows Mobile was coming. And Dan will get into that in more detail about the schedule. But we saw manufacturers start dropping devices and offering Android devices in replacement. However, we saw something interesting at the same time. We saw our customers switching not to these new devices, but we saw a lot of customers, because they had successful deployments, try to stay on the older operating system because they didn't have the budget or the bandwidth for that change. However, in the beginning of April 2017, we saw some bigger problems hit our customer base. Windows Mobile Device Center failed to run on Win 10 PCs because of some upgrades in their patches. And Joe's going to talk about that in more detail. But on our side, we started receiving calls from end users. They just couldn't get their devices to connect. They couldn't sync. We saw workforces go down because of some updates that Win 10 pushed out. And we were on a fast track to solve the problems. And over the last year, we've been chasing this moving target and helping our customers to the best of our ability. And we thought it would be a great idea if we just spent the next half hour sharing with you what we've learned about this problem. So I'm going to flip it over to Joe, and he's going to get a little bit into the weeds and talk about the technical aspects of this problem.
Thanks, Brad. Hello, everyone. Joe Cradle. I'm a solutions architect here at PTS. I'm sure I've spoken to some of you in the past. So I'm sure, as most of you know, Windows Mobile Device Center is required for connecting your Windows-based devices to your PC for them to be recognized properly. So around April of last year, Windows Mobile Device Center had stopped working on Windows 10 due to what they're dubbing the Creators Update, build 1703. It was rolled out starting April 2017. So I personally actually witnessed this event myself. As I was trying to create an application for a customer, I came in one morning, I go to connect my device, I noticed that it's not connecting. So I decided to try and launch Windows Mobile Device Center manually, and noticed that it either would not open at all, or once it did open, it would close right away with a Microsoft error. So I brought this attention to our IT team, and they ended up finding an article with these entries that needed to be made to fix the problem, which we'll dive into in a bit. But mainly, the creators updated a new feature related to the SVC host exe, where the services will not share the same SVC host exe by default. So some of these services that Windows Mobile Device Center use, being Wrap-By Manager and West WCESCOM, use these such services and were affected, causing them to fail, which in turn caused Windows Mobile Device Center not to launch on Windows 10. So because of this, your Windows Mobile and CE devices could no longer be seen by your PC for transferring files to and from the device or syncing data. And this greatly affected our TracerPlus users, as we've seen, in the past year, more and more customers reach out to us saying that they're having this particular issue. So that's affecting the deployment of TracerPlus projects, as well as performing USB-based cradle syncing with our TracerPlus Connect software. So that's the basics of the issue. So I'm going to throw it over to Dan, and he's going to talk about the Microsoft end-of-life schedule, and then he'll pass it back to me, and we can talk about some of the solutions. So Dan, take it away.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yeah, so if anybody's familiar with Microsoft's end-of-life schedule, it can be a little bit confusing, as sometimes the message is not even clearly communicated. But at this point with Windows Mobile and Windows CE, the message is clear and officially clear based on this chart. So as you can see, some of the versions of Windows Mobile, which includes Windows Embedded, the mainstream support has already ended. And you see the other ones, one of them is going out to 2023, but most of them are ending much sooner than that. So depending on your project timeline, it's almost time to start thinking about, the next steps, which, we'll talk about later in the webinar. But from these dates, you can see it's a mix from 2018 for extended support up to 2023. And all the other ones are pretty much out of mainstream support. So one of the things I'll highlight with this chart too is the difference between mainstream and extended support, because that's not always clear. Mainstream support is the time period where the OS is new, it's being actively developed, new features are being added, support is available by phone or by email, and of course security updates are happening, right? So that's one of the key things. Extended support involves a couple of different things. One of the key things is they're not going to be adding new features, so it's not actively being developed. They are not accepting free or email support anymore. They're not accepting feature requests, which is sort of part of the development process. And they do have phone support available, but it's on a contract basis and you have to purchase it. And they still do, the other important note is they still do provide security updates, but that's about it. And if they sway from that a little bit, they're not usually going to add a new feature, but they might add something that they consider important enough in the extended date model. For Windows Mobile and Windows CE, that's not really been the case. They've been out of new feature support for a pretty long time now, even though they are only just coming out of mainstream support. So the writing's been on the wall for a while. But yeah, this is pretty much the date. So time flies, as everybody knows. So those dates are coming up pretty quickly. Joe, if you want to just jump to the next slide. So what does that schedule mean? I think I just described it, but the devices will still function. And if you're on, an older Windows OS, they should still function. Although I think we've seen some mixed instances of Windows Mobile Device Center causing issues on Windows 7. It's not nearly as much as Windows 10. So the devices will still work. They'll work in your hand. They'll work with wireless. The Windows Mobile Device Center is going to go away and get worse as time goes on. But even though they work, they're going to introduce some issues, right? So I'll attack this from two different angles. I'll attack this from customers or users outside of the TracerPlus community, and then talk about the ones inside the community. So for broad developers not necessarily using TracerPlus, but creating their own apps in C++ or .NET, those guys have environments that are built usually around Visual Studio, and they're reliant on an integration to the device via Cradle so they can debug things and troubleshoot and do what developers do. That's going to be tougher and tougher as Windows Mobile Device Center starts giving you the grief. So their choices are to now start considering these new OSs and new platforms and effectively rewriting, because a lot of that code's not going to be portable. So they have to make this grand decision about what OS they want to support. Maybe they want to support multiple OSs and double or triple their requirements. And then, of course, keep track of that moving target too. A lot of companies are moving to, BYOD, right? Bring your own device. So you may not have a choice as an IT guy. You may not have a choice whether you're going to develop for Android or iOS. You might have to do both. And like the bullet point says, if you're sticking with Windows Mobile and CE, you're going to have a headache. You're going to experience that debugging trouble. Pretty much no matter what. For TracerPlus users, it's a little bit better. It's actually a lot better. Desktop has been around since, 2005 or 2006. And the idea behind that was to put the pain of OS switching on us, on PTS, as opposed to putting it on you. So when you create a project with TracerPlus, you're not creating it for a specific OS necessarily. And when you push it out to a Windows mobile device, you can expect very similar behavior when you push it out to an Android device, just by basically choosing the device type in your deploy process. That's the same going forward. We still have that same process. You develop one time, and aside from maybe a screen size change, you don't really have to do too much else. So really, you want to make sure you're running the latest versions. Version 10 is coming out very soon. The beginning of next month looks like the target. And like I said, you don't have to do much. If you have an existing Windows mobile project, simply choosing Android as your target is about all you have to do. And like I said, maybe you want to change the screen size if you're going to a tablet. But that's it. So that's that's kind of the impact of the schedule on developers, TracerPlus or just more broad developers in general. So with that said, I will throw it back to Joe so he can go through some of the steps to help with the pain, or what you need to do moving forward.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Yep.
All right, so option 1 to resolve this Windows Mobile Device Center issue, we consider this a quick fix, and it's mainly updating 2 registry keys. So the Windows Mobile Device Center fixes and improvements that can help with this Windows Mobile Device Center running on Windows 10. So the addition of these 2 registry keys that will actually allow Windows Mobile Device Center to run again. And I had actually seen this issue recently on a new machine we spun up here. So I was able to apply these 2 keys, and you can see this knowledge base article here. But for those of you who just want to search the knowledge base for this particular article, if you just type in WMDC into the search, you'll see all of these articles relevant to Windows Mobile Device Center. And you simply just end up running these 2 registry keys from a command prompt in administrator mode. It'll apply these registry changes, you do a reboot, and then Windows Mobile Device Center should start to run again. There's also some changes you can make to actually improve the performance in Windows 10, as even though Windows Mobile Device Center may run again, you can still see some intermittent connectivity issues with the devices. So there's also some things you can do to help with that, including tweaking some of the actual Windows services for Windows Mobile Device Center. And then the third option is switching the USB connectivity type on your Windows devices. Basically, you're selecting it from a network type device or a network type USB connection to a serial type USB connection. So that can sometimes also improve the connectivity of the device. So the benefits of this is it's a quick fix for your current deployments or small deployments. There is no processor hardware changes required. You're just making these tweaks on the PC that you're connecting to. But there are some risks with this, in that it is a short-term fix. There's no telling, as Windows makes updates, as we've seen in this case, it could end up breaking it again. So there is a risk involved with that. So option 2, which is sort of a short-term fix, is moving everything to Wi-Fi or Ethernet connectivity. So what this would enable you to do is actually do your TracerPlus Connect syncing over Wi-Fi or Ethernet, or even WAN devices if you're, or WAN connection if your devices support it. But this will allow you to bypass the whole USB connectivity and not have to worry about Windows Mobile Device Center, while still being able to sync your data back and forth with TracerPlus. So as far as project deployment goes, there's a few options here where you can actually build a CAB file that can be downloaded via a web server if you have this internet connectivity, and you just execute any CAB updates or project updates that way. You can also copy files to an SD card, then place that card into the device to copy the files that you need off of it. Some of the benefits, it's definitely a longer term solution, as it does take Windows Mobile Device Center out of the equation. So if they do happen to break it again, you should be covered in that aspect. It is minimal investment, as Wi-Fi is free, and usually Ethernet connectivity is pretty straightforward. So you should be able to get your device on your network. So some of the risks is that you may have to introduce an MDM or mobile device management tool if you need to update this software remotely. If you can't download a CAD file via web server, you may have to deploy some of these updates using a utility such as an MDM. But once again, it's not a long-term solution, as the Windows Mobile OS life is still sort of up in the air. So it definitely does have an end of life. And as Dan discussed, you saw some of those dates. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Kristin, and she's going to talk about the long-term solution.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm Kristin, I'm account manager here at PTS, and I'm going to apologize in advance, as it's going to be hard for me not to promote TracerPlus for those of you on the webinar not using it. It's just such a great tool, and we'll talk about that. So long-term solutions will require an investment. There's no way around it, but it's an investment that will only enhance your overall mobile solution. We're convinced of that, and we've heard from customers that are real happy that they have made that transition before problems had arisen. For those of you that are currently using TracerPlus, I think you'll be glad that you did choose TracerPlus. The transition from Windows Mobile to Android is a pretty seamless process. Most recently, we've worked with TracerPlus customers who've transitioned from a Palm device to Android, and fortunately they were able to make the transition without any downtime, which made their experience less stressful. So the first thing you'll need to do is be sure that you're running the latest version of TracerPlus. You'll also want to be sure that you're up to date with your TracerPlus support contracts before attempting to do this. If you're not sure if you're current with your support contracts, just email support@tracerplus.com, and someone from our support team will contact you and get you up and running with what you need. Once you're running the latest version of TracerPlus, it's just a matter of reconfiguring the application to connect via Wi-Fi or Ethernet, whichever of those methods you decide to do. And with our new QR code deployment and APKs available via our TracerPlus Publisher product, it's easier than ever to share and install TracerPlus onto Android devices. And for those of you who don't use TracerPlus, we would encourage you to download our trial and give it a try. You can create an application, you can connect your device, and you can even sync data without having to purchase it. So the benefits. There's lots of great new devices out there on the market, and who doesn't like getting to work with new stuff? So I would encourage you to go out to the web and look up some of the newer devices, Android devices out there. Some of the added features also built in with the Android devices, like NFC and beacon technology, are great, and the speed of which Android runs on is a whole lot faster than a Windows mobile device. So there's a whole lot more that you can do with the newer devices out there, and especially if you're using TracerPlus, you can use all these new features without much effort at all. So like it or not, Android is here to stay, and with it leading the market share, most manufacturers of barcode and RFID scanners will be using it. So the risks. Yes, changing your process and your mobile application may be a risk, but without risk, there's no rewards. Who knows? You could be reviewing your current process and application, and it may open up an opportunity to see inefficiencies that you might not have seen before. And with TracerPlus, you can build a mobile app around your process. So the changes on the user side or the user's experience are minimal. We've often heard from customers that if it weren't for TracerPlus and the ability to configure an app around our process, we never would have gotten the buy-in from our users out in the field. So real encouraging. The investment required to purchase new devices is never easy, especially when it's unexpected. Therefore, we would encourage you to start having those conversations about budget needs and discussions with your hardware provider about scanner choices that you have today. So whether you choose a short-term or a long-term decision, moving to Android or even iOS is inevitable. It's going to happen. And being prepared for tomorrow will make all the difference. So, and if you have any questions, you know, on the support side, you know, email support@tracerplus.com. And if you have any questions about scanner choices, software choices with TracerPlus or any of the newer features that are coming out, you can email your account manager. And if you don't know who that is, you can certainly email sales@tracerplus.com. We'd be happy to help you. And so I think I'm passing it back to Brad.
Hi, and so I'll just finish it off here, and then we'll open it up for questions. You know, you business leaders and partners and end users, you have some choices to make. However, as Dan said a few times, and we've been hearing for the last 4 years, Windows Mobile is on its last legs and quickly going away, and the writing's there right in the end of life, you know, details on Microsoft's site. And the good news is we have another platform, Android, which has no end of life in sight. However, as we mentioned before, the operating system is constantly evolving. So it does make it a little harder for those custom developers out there to keep up. So if you are doing your own code out there, we are seeing a lot of customers come in, and it's just moving too quickly for them to keep up with it. So what are your choices? What are you going to do? Nothing, or are we going to take some proactive action? And we're encouraging all of our TracerPlus users to please, at the minimum, start looking at the first 2 steps immediately, which is to, you know, patch the system, get it Win 10 ready for you know, TracerPlus or whatever application you're using, so that your users in the field won't all of a sudden not be able to sync. There's no worse call than that. And then immediately start updating your processes. A batch sync over a cradled connection to a PC is a lot different than a Wi-Fi or an Ethernet cradled batch sync. And you're going to have to get the architecture in place to support Wi-Fi and Ethernet and do some testing. We're encouraging all of our users and proactively working with many of our customers to make sure that they take these steps so it is a smooth transition. And we're also encouraging everybody to choose your new OS and plan out your redeployment. I know we're talking a lot about Android, but iOS is also out there. We have alpha users in the hundreds right now using it. However, it's a different world. It's more of a consumer device. So again, if you're in a rugged environment, Android is really the way to go right now. And it will be for the foreseeable future. For you Windows Mobile CE users not on Win 10, and you say, well, I'm not on Win 10 and I have no plans, and we've heard customers say that, you know, the writing is still on the wall. It's just around the corner that you're going to start experiencing these same sort of problems. It's just going to be a security patch update or, you know, maybe a bug introduced with a version upgrade on your operating system, and it's not going to run. So we want to plan for the future and make sure we're working with actively developed operating systems and software. And you're going to want to review the technologies available and take the same process above to get your new OS in place, start testing it, planning for the future, and even maybe introducing some new feature sets with new available things like beacons and RFID and all the other great technologies that our users are starting to see the ROI on. Our job is a little tougher on the PTS side. We're all about being backwards compatible. Those who have been using us since the Palm days know that. We do not and will not make it a habit to leave our customers high and dry. However, we, like you, have economies and the laws of business that we have to abide by, or we will no longer be in existence. So we have a pretty clear plan. Version 10 is still supporting Windows Mobile and CE, but there's limited new features. There's just some things that are not possible with Windows Mobile that we could do with Android and iOS, one of which would be the QR code deployment. We just didn't see the benefit. The cost far outweighed the advantage for our customers. You know, we are going to support all of our Windows Mobile CE users for the foreseeable future. And our version 11 will not include any new Windows Mobile CE features, so that's around a year out in 2019. However, it will still be compatible with the older features. So we are going to go through the whole process of testing and doing everything we have to do. In 2021, normal support for TracerPlus and Windows Mobile will end. And we're doing this, so we're really following in the footsteps of our hardware partners who have very aggressive plans to have most of their customers on Android by that point. And we are sure many customers will move to iOS at the same point with BYOD devices. However, we are not going to leave you out in the cold. We are going to have, like we do now for many of our customers that are happy with much older versions than version 10 or version 9 or even 8. We have some back into the 7s and 6s running happily, and Kristin talked about a customer that was still on Palm. We do offer premium support for those customers because they're going to go right up to a tier 2 to tier 3 representative. Our tier 1 reps are not trained on those older versions. We're going to continue to educate our customers as best we can on this continually moving target. Again, we've heard about it for the last 4 years, and when the problem first started taking place, no one knew what was going on. You could look at the Reddit boards and a lot of the blog sites, and there's a lot of panicked customers, not just TracerPlus customers, when these errors started taking place. So we're gonna stay on top of it, probably more aggressively than we did in the past, as we see that it's starting to take place and the incompatible issues are taking place more often than not. And we're really going to help make it as easy as possible for our end users and even customers that aren't our end users that may be using other platforms to get over to a TracerPlus version 10 application. So we're going to offer upgrade assistance. You can send us your TracerPlus applications and we'll assist with the upgrade to the new version. We'll train you on all the new features of the version. And even if you're running another application, we can go through a scope of work and figure out if we can do that pretty effectively, and it really wouldn't even cost you money. We only do these session configurations unless we can actually create the application. And Kristin went through it. There's a huge advantage. We're in this 100%. This is what we do day in and day out. If you're working with outside custom developers, again, we hear the stories because we see the bad experiences, but the bad experiences usually are an outsourced development team or even an internal development team who did multiple projects, and this one project worked fine until it failed. And instead of having an organization like PTS or some of our competitors out there who are all about mobile software and working with it every day and can assist you, they have internal developers or maybe even software companies where mobile was an afterthought who don't see it as a priority and may even not call them back and just tell them to upgrade immediately. You might have a couple hundred users in the field. That's a tough call to hear when you say, hey, listen, we're not syncing right now, and they say, well, you should be on Android. Sorry, we can't help you. And anyone who's been using software for a long time has made that call and received that answer. So again, we're here to help. We want to hear your feedback. We also want to hear about the new features we're coming out. Tell us if you're excited about them or not. Well, thanks everybody for attending. I think that's about it. Again, not the most exciting topic, and no one wants to hear bad news, especially folks that have a system that's working fine. It's a hard one to stomach when you have a deployment out there and everything's running smoothly, and now you're being asked to upgrade, make an investment, or change something that isn't broken. I want to encourage everybody to join our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you use Twitter still, follow us on Twitter. And if you're allowed to use Facebook, we try to put more personal stuff up there, so follow us on Facebook. On YouTube, I just also wanted to thank everybody. We passed 1,000 subscribers a month ago. The numbers are kind of amazing, and actions speak louder than words. So a lot of thanks to our users who I think are thanking us by watching a lot of our videos and learning a ton. We're doing our best to offer that education up there, whether it be about what the latest mobile devices are and what we like versus what we don't like, or how do you set up TracerPlus on your own. Thanks, Kristin. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Dan, for joining us last moment. Dan wasn't scheduled to do this webinar, but someone got US Open tickets, so Dan had to step in this morning. I think that's about it. Thanks everybody for attending.
All right, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy our content, be sure to like and subscribe, and visit our channel below for more. You can also find us online at TracerPlus.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. If you have any questions, feel free to call or email us at any time, and we'll be happy to help.